folks. Happy Tuesday. Happy Players Championship Week. And thank you for coming back and joining me tonight here on Next on the Tee. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and it's time for, what's what, right? The not named yet fifth major on the tour, right? We simply know it as the Players. I think we all look forward to sitting down this weekend and watching what happens on the 17th hole, the Island Green, right? You heard Donnie Hammond say on this show a few weeks ago, it can be the scariest shot in golf. He said, the butterflies came back to him all over again, just thinking about what it was like teeing it up on the 17th hole there. But it's always fun to watch and see how the guys, deal with the closing three holes, because 16 and 18 can be just as stressful, especially if the winds are up. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to a wonderful weekend of golf, and the Players always seems to deliver. Now, what isn't stressful should be this show. In fact, it should be the opposite of that. So you know what? Sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour. And tonight, I've got two wonderful guests that I'm excited to talk with and share with you. And first up, I'm going to be joined by Debbie Doniger. You know Debbie from several sources, I'm sure. Debbie has an amazing list of accomplishments, which I'll share just a few with you, just to kind of wet your whistle, if you will. She won the 1992 ACC Championship when she was at the University of North Carolina. She is a top 5 teacher in the state of New York. She's a Golf Magazine top 100 teacher in America. You've seen her on the Golf Channel doing some playing lessons and Fitness Friday sessions, and she also hosts two golf shows on Sirius XM's PGA channel. And like I said, that's just the tip of the iceberg of all the great things that she's done. We'll talk about all of those things, plus some tips for how we can better prepare our bodies to play the game of golf, and she'll be along with me here in just a few minutes. Following Debbie, I'm going to get a return visit from the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. You guys know how much I love spending time listening to Peter tell stories about the history of golf, right? Tonight, we'll talk about some of the parallels between the careers of Bobby Jones and Tiger Woods. When you go back and you read about how dominant Bobby Jones was from about 1920 to 1930, it's very interesting and very similar to Tiger's run from 1997 to 2008. It gets even more similar when you look at how the media and the fans reacted when Bobby Jones announced that he was going to make his comeback at what was then the 1934 Augusta Invitational, what we all know now as the Masters. It's very similar to the media frenzy and the attention that surrounds Tiger, even when he does what he did last Sunday, which is finish tied for 55th. So I'm going to get Peter's thoughts on that and a whole lot more when he joins me a little bit later on in this half hour. So a lot more great stories and information coming your way tonight on this edition of Next on the Tee. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking the journey with me over the next hour. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our good friend Matthew Lawrence and his show Backspin Golf, which airs Sunday mornings from 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. It's my regular Sunday 8:03 a.m. tee time. It's broadcast on ESPN Radio AM 1300 WLXG up in Lexington, Kentucky. You can stream it live by going online to their site at WLXG.com or by downloading the WLXG app. It's a great way to start your Sunday mornings. His 4-minute older brother, Mitchell, also has a wonderful golf show that marries golf and travel. It's called Talking Golf Getaways, which you can find online at golfnewsnet.com or over on Audio Boom. He and his co-host, Darren Bunch, travel all over the world, and they let you know about great places to play, stay, and even eat while you're there. Again, it's called Talking Golf Getaways, and you can stream it on golfnewsnet.com or on Audio Boom. And as you guys know, we are sponsored by the French Lick Resort. Let's hear a word from our good friend Steve Rondinero about all the great things they've got going on up there.
Play legendary golf at French Lick Resort, the only place in the country where you can play courses by 2 Hall of Fame designers on the same property. Our Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses offer 2 very different challenges. Experience them both and save with our Hall of Fame package. Our 2 historic hotels are unique as well. Cap it off with a fun visit to the French Lick Casino. Check us out online at FrenchLick.com. Bring a group and save even more. Play legendary golf this season at French Lick Resort.
Yeah, folks, be sure to go online to FrenchLick.com to see for yourself what a wonderful place it is and to book your stay. And folks, you've heard me talking about Club Hub sensors over the last several months. It's the best portable shot tracking and swing analysis golf device out there on the market. Other shot trackers tell you what happened. Club Hub tells you what happened and why. Take the progress that you make on the practice tee directly to your rounds with you with the only device of its kind that can go on the course with you. If you have club hub sensors on your clubs like I do, they screw right into the tops of your clubs, and I can tell you, you're going to learn more about your swing and all of the data surrounding it than you've learned probably since you've picked up a golf club. And certainly for me over the last 40 years that I've been playing the game, because not only do you get GPS distances to the hazards and the green, but after your round, you can look back at the images and the layout of every hole in the course that you just played and see exactly where and how far you hit every shot. Another GPS tool in the market captures that and lets you go back and review your round the way the Club Hub app does. It's available for Androids or iPhones, and the app keeps track of your swing speed with every club in your bag, your tempo, your angle of attack, plus you're going to get a 3D view of your swing as well. And again, no other rangefinder can do all that for you. Go over to clubhubgolf.com to order your set of Club Hub sensors today and enter the coupon code NEXT to get 10% off on all products at checkout. Again, go to clubhubgolf.com, enter the coupon code NEXT, and you're going to get the best GPS and swing analysis tool on the market for a great low price, and you're going to see your game in a whole new way. Please also check out our friends at the Bobby Jones Apparel Company by going online to bobbyjones.com. Their spring collection is out, and the shift in seasons is an opportunity to change things up layer upon layer. They've added some great details, fresh colors, new additions with genuine enduring character. They make style easy. Find carefully coordinated outfits in a variety of colors and options by going online to bobbyjones.com. And we're also proud to be partnering with Russ Holden and the folks over at Caddy for a Cure. One of the most unique opportunities in the world of professional golf is available to you through Caddy for a Cure. Spend a day inside the ropes with one of the world's best players as their caddy. It's a fantastic way to have the time of your life while supporting our wounded service members and Fanconi anemia. You're going to get to walk side by side with your tour player, experiencing professional golf as an insider. In addition to the amazing experience you're going to have a fantastic gift package for you from Caddy for a Cure, which includes Under Armour logoed apparel and an eyewear package, a tour-grade caddy bib, which is suitable for autographs and framing, a tin cup ball marking gift, chef's cut real jerky, and professional photographs from your day. Go online to caddyforacure.com. That's caddyforacure.com, caddyforacure.com to learn more. All right, now joining me on the French Lick Resort guest line is Debbie Doniger. Let me give you some more background on Debbie. She played her college golf at the University of North Carolina from 1989 to 1992, and she captained the team in her junior and senior seasons. She won the 1992 ACC Championship, shooting rounds of 73, 73, 74, a three-round total of 220 at Bermuda Run Country Club in Advance, North Carolina. She helped lead the Tar Heels to the team title by 2 strokes over Florida State. She was selected to the All-ACC team that year. She was one of 5 college seniors to represent the U.S. in the World University Golf Championship, and she won the individual bronze medal. She was named to the ACC's 50th anniversary women's golf team in 2003 as one of the best women golfers in the conference over its first 50 years. After college, she played on the Futures Tour, the Gold Coast Tour, and the European Tour. In 2015, Golf Digest ranked her as the 5th best teacher in the state of New York and top 50 in the country. She's also been named a top 20 teacher under 40. She is one of Golf Magazine's top 100 teachers in America. And if all of that wasn't enough, she is the director of golf instruction at Glen Arbor Golf Club up in Bedford, New York. And she hosts 2 golf shows on Sirius XM's PGA channel, The Golf for Girls with Natalie Gilbus and Golfer's Edge with Ben Shear. And I am honored she is with me tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Debbie. Thanks for coming on the show.
Geez, what an intro.
Hey, you've done a lot.
Listen. All good.
So,
thank you so much for having me.
So, Debbie, as I was doing the research and checking out your website, debbiedoniger.com, I read that you started playing golf at the age of 7. What got you playing golf at 7?
So I grew up in Connecticut, and right around where Kessler, your next guest, is from. And we went out to California every vacation with my family. I had my grandparents lived out in California. So I played a bunch of sports and just started playing golf at age 7. And by the time I was 12 years old, I decided that was it. This is my passion in life. And, you know, would I have ever thought that you dated me in that intro, that in my 40s I would be still in golf in a different capacity, not playing the tour, but I never would have imagined that I would be able to do what I do, love what I do. I'm sure Peter is surprised as well because he knew me as a child growing up here in the Northeast. But, yeah, I was definitely single-minded by the time I was 12, 13, and was able to forge relationships within the golf industry that has led me to where I am today. So I've been very fortunate and very lucky.
And, Debbie, as a junior golfer, you work with Jim McLean. So, boy, right to the top with respect to instructors. What was it like for you working with him?
Right. So that really is huge. It's huge in a lot of ways. One, Jim, when I started working with him, I was 12 years old at Quaker Ridge Golf Club in Scarsdale, which is a great club. Jim was probably, maybe one or two in the Met section, which is the New York section, as teachers, but wasn't heralded around the world as he is today. But he certainly was one of the best, and my parents were able to find out where he was, who was the best in our area, and Jim and I, had a great run for a very, very long time. I think that I was rooted in correct basics, correct fundamentals. He taught me how to play the game. He was not only a teacher but a coach and, just a very good friend and a mentor. And then subsequently, when I stopped playing for a living, he became my boss and really trained me how to teach and what to look for. So Jim falls under this huge umbrella for me as, obviously my main mentor and somebody so important in my life. And there is absolutely no way that I would have the playing accolades that I have, that I would be able to play to this day the way I do with no practice whatsoever. You and I could shoot nothing. And also be able to teach the way I do and understand what to look for with all levels of players. So, Jim, when I was 12 years old, let me tell you something. When you see on social media, teachers saying, wow, we didn't really understand how important center contact was until launch monitors came along. I am here to tell you that 30 years ago, we absolutely knew center contact was imperative. We were using indelible markers. We were using impact tape. And it wasn't just Jim. It was teachers of that ilk. So sometimes when you see things in modern-day teaching, and it seems earth-shattering with these amazing teachers that I have been able to now call friends, the fundamental center contact was being taught way back when. So I think that I was really ahead of the game in terms of understanding what I needed to do as a player to be really great.
So you mentioned a minute ago that he taught you how to play the game. When you say play the game, is that the fundamentals that you're mentioning, or was that strategy, how to course manage? What do you mean by he taught you how to play the game?
Yeah, that's a good point. So not only he helped me with all my technical aspects, my mechanics, the right grip for me, because everybody's built differently, the parameters that I was able to swing in to play good golf, but playing course management-wise. I mean, Jim and I would be out on the course, till it got dark, and I would be running around chasing after my ball, but also playing with him. He would always play with me. So I would learn how to play. He was a great player in his own right, and different little shots and different nuances. And like you said, course management, where to, the rudimentary things, where to tee off on a tee box, what kind of shot am I going to play, how to minimize the highest score possible from a very basic level to then, when I was playing for a living, to a very detailed professional level, because then it becomes that much more important, the shots that you save on the golf course. So he's the all-around, not only consummate professional, but the all-around great teacher, could teach all aspects of the game and really well.
So, Debbie, how does a girl growing up in New York and playing junior golf in New York and winning everything as a junior in New York decide to play her college golf at North Carolina?
So you're allowed 5 recruiting trips. I did not play on my high school team because only the boys could play. I didn't want to play with the boys. I also, wanted to play for a living and play golf in college. So my 5th recruiting trip, was either going to be to UCLA or North Carolina. And I had talked to the UCLA coach. I didn't like the 4 schools I had gone to visit. It was like, I can't see myself here. So if I don't like Chapel Hill, that's it. I'm just going to go to UCLA. She had already signed either 1 or 2 of my peers, and UCLA was going to be a top team. It already was. I liked the coach. Done deal. I didn't really know much about North Carolina or Chapel Hill because, like you said, people from this area, especially 25 plus years ago, nobody went to North Carolina. Nobody got into Chapel Hill, let alone would, sort of go south. And also, remember, this is 25 years ago where I was really considered a dork. And, nobody was playing golf. Everybody was like field hockey and lacrosse and soccer. So it was just a very strange time. But I found solace and friendships on the AJGA and, of course, my little circle of junior golfers in the Met section. And then I took my trip to North Carolina. I got off the plane in Raleigh-Durham. I saw the national championships that Carolina had won, that Duke had won. And I said, oh, that's interesting. That's kind of cool and cool school spirit, team spirit. And my coach was there to pick me up, and my dad was with me, and was the sweetest, nicest person. And then we were driving towards campus. I see these huge blue Tar Heels on the road, these amazing, beautiful green trees. It was like a perfect Carolina blue sky. And I said, that's it. We're done. I don't even need to get out of the car. We are done. And then my teammates were just awesome. I mean, I had the best recruiting trip and just signed on the dotted line. I graduated high school early, 6 months, worked with Jim, and was like, let's just go. It was the absolute greatest time, one of the greatest times of my life.
So take us back to the 1992 ACC Championship. What was it like for you, not only winning the event as an individual, but also helping the team win the conference championship as well?
The ACCs, by my senior year, had just come back into fruition, and I remember it was like a goal. Like I wrote it down literally with my sports psychologist, said that was my goal. I wanted to win ACCs and just did it. I remember specifically in that round I had 4-putted, I don't know, in the beginning of my last round, and I just can remember to this day just being very emotionally level, even-keeled, like whatever, it's still good. The course was a really tough course. And when I had sunk the putt on the last hole, my main goal was like, oh my gosh, did we win as a team? Like I totally forgot. I wanted to win the title, but I saw my teammates there, and I was like, did we win? Did we win? And we did win, and that was the most exciting part. And, of course, capturing the individual crown because it was a goal was so cool, but I was just so excited to win as a team. I mean, college golf, to be in an individual sport like golf, and for any of your listeners who have kids that play very seriously or, just play in general, it's a loner sport. And so to be a part of a team, which you then are a part of if you do have the opportunity to play D1, D2, or D3, you get that sort of other aspect in an individual sport, and there's nothing better unless you choose. The only caveat would be if you choose the wrong team and the wrong coach, of which I have had students do that, and then it's a different scenario. And it makes me very upset because my experience was so phenomenal that when I see mistakes being made, it's just, gosh, you don't get those years back, so you just sort of have to right the ship in your own way, and that's tough.
A couple more on your time at North Carolina. But after you guys win the ACC Championship, where was this celebration? Where did you guys go to celebrate what you guys just accomplished?
Oh, my gosh. I have no idea. I think that we were such a simple team. I'm sure we just, celebrated right there on the golf course. I am not sure we did anything other than, go out to dinner. We were a very close-knit team, and I think we probably just got ready for nationals. I mean, it's like one and done, yeah, let's go, but let's go to nationals. Let's go try and win.
And you mentioned 4-putting at the beginning of that round, right? So in a team competition, right, every stroke counts. So do you, as the captain of the team, did you ever have to talk to the team, or did your coach ever have to talk to the team look, if your round is going south, right? Don't let it go completely south, right? Don't let a 78 turn into an 82 or an 82 turn into an 85, because one or two of those shots might be the difference between us winning this tournament or losing. Did you ever have to have that competition, like, mentally don't go south on us?
I think that inherently, if you're playing D1 golf, you're so rooted from junior golf that even though 5 of you are traveling, 4 scores count. And your coach is pretty much giving you keys as to how important you are in terms of the rest of the day if we have one of our players that can't get off the roller coaster and it's just horrendous. So, it's a fine line between you don't want to get too result-oriented while you're out on the course and put too much pressure on yourself, certainly as a college player, to say, oh, my gosh, I can't make any bogeys. But also as a coach, you want to give information when appropriate to your players to say, look, we need you right now. We're up to 4. We got a player out there that's dying, not literally. But look, coaching is tough. And especially in today's day and age, golf is so prolific and booming that winning is paramount to some of these programs more so than others. So, coaching has changed and college golf has changed. In my day, it wasn't as cutthroat. Now it really is. And I mean, look, I can't believe that Nationals is being televised on Golf Channel. They just had a whole huge expose on the regionals for men and women's golf. I think that's amazing. You have Ricky Fowler executive producing a show called Driven, which is following OSU golf all the way to Nationals. So, I mean, college golf is 100% healthy. And especially junior girls golf, I'm sorry, it's very healthy. So when I hear numbers and naysayers and negativity, the numbers that I see don't support that.
And Debbie, when you're working with students, right, and you've had some, students go on to play college golf and beyond and that sort of thing, how do you instill in them how to deal with pressure? You talked about having a mental coach earlier, but how do you get your folks to relax out on the golf course, try not to let the pressure get to them, and if it's starting to get to them, how to relieve the pressure?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, look, if it's necessary, I have to bring in a mental performance coach or a sports psychologist or whatever you want to call that person, and I've got about 5 in the back or the palm of my hand for my students, depending on their personalities. I, of course, work with them on the course. But, the bottom line is, but it's really hard as a kid to understand that it's not life or death. You're going to shoot 80, who cares? Nobody's dying. I mean, certainly as adults, we have way more perspective than we do as kids. So if we can instill any kind of perspective, and anything can happen in golf, and that, I hate to take the title from Rotella, although he is a friend of mine, golf is not a game of perfect. It is inconsistent. It is okay to be inconsistent. And to understand that anything can happen. You can never give up. And, playing one shot at a time while everybody says it, if you can get lost in that fact, that is a beautiful way to play. And, you have to learn to enjoy yourself. I think one thing that Peter Jacobson, who I've known also since I'm a kid, if you don't have a real intrinsic love for the game of golf as a junior, then it is really hard to ride the lows, because there will be big-time lows. And you got to love the game for what it is. Otherwise, you can't really ride those lows really well. There's peaks and valleys in all athletics. So, I think it's just understanding the family dynamics. Maybe you have to have a talk with the parents. That's always not so easy. And then understanding the kid that's in front of you and, really the personality to try and get the best out of them in a very, very tough sport.
Debbie, just a couple more before we let you go, and I want to get a tip for our listeners, because you've got so many great tips on your website, again, DebbieDoniger.com, and the first one I want to talk about is hip rotation. And most players set up to the ball with their feet square to the target line, and for players my age, and I'm in my early 50s, or anyone for that matter, who want to get a little more hip rotation. Talk about what flaring our feet out can do for us.
Well, flaring your feet is just a cheat. It's giving you internal hip rotation. It's giving you external hip rotation. So narrowing your stance and flaring your toes, whatever many degrees you need, 5, 10, 12 degrees, depending on what your teacher tells you, is literally allowing your hips to turn a little bit more if needed, and also narrowing your stance helps you rotate more as well. If you think about just like a wide stance, you can't, it's going to hinder rotation. So the narrower you get and you flare a little, you get a little toe flare, that's an immediate hip rotation key, and it's in your setup, so then you don't have to think about it.
And Debbie, as a result of the years playing the game and being outside exposed to the sun, you developed skin cancer. Talk about how you found out, what you went through, and what you're doing now to prevent it.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to talk about that. So I did a testimony for my dermatologist, Dr. Whitney Bowe, and her book, The Beauty of Dirty Skin. And I have had 4, actually one was a squamous, so I'm going to say 3 basal cells on my face, and had to have 4 Mohs, M-O-H-S surgeries. And, look, I'm in my 40s. I don't really care what people think anymore. And so I think it's really important to talk about, because if you see my website, if you see me on Instagram, you would have no idea that I've had skin cancer and these crazy surgeries and stitches. And look, I think some of it's in my DNA. If I had worn sunblock when I was 12 all through college and professional golf, would I have had these skin cancers? I don't know if you could say yes or no. It's not genetic. My family doesn't have skin cancer. That's a little strange. The fact that I've had 4 and I'm in my 40s is strange. The sun is the only key that we can harp on to think, well, what do we do about it? So Dr. Bowe, and she's a personal friend of mine as well, has been able to give me some vitamins, probiotics that deal with skin health that I wouldn't have otherwise known. She's also given me a vitamin called HelioCare, which anybody can get at Walgreens, and it's there's a fern extract in there, again, scientifically proven to mitigate skin cancer. So everything that she's given me, she's ridiculously smart. She ruthlessly researches it. She talks all over the world. So it's scientifically based protocols that she's given me, as well as sunblock, obviously. I do laser treatments. I do whatever it takes to not have this happen again. And my kids are very aware of the importance of sunblock. And, look, she sees more tennis, sailing, and golf skin cancers than any other sport, and it's all, even you in your 50s, you just have to stay on top of it. It's like anything. If you catch it early, you should be fine. If you ignore it and you want to be in denial and then it happens, it's not so good. So the key is talk about it, go get your skin checked. I would go to somebody who has really good technology, not just a glance over. I've been to enough dermatologists that sort of gloss over and they're like, yeah, you're fine. It's not fine. There's more technology out there to really look inside something that bothers you. And if something bothers you, you need to speak up and be your own advocate.
Debbie, before we let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you're doing, whether it's on your website, on the air, or over social media as well?
Oh, thanks, man. Look, I'm not great at social media. I'm trying to get better at it. But anybody can contact me at debbiedoniger.com. I do teach outside lessons, like you said, at Glen Arbor Golf Club. It's what I do now. I teach for a living. And you can follow me at Debbie Doniger on Twitter. It's at Deborah, D-E-B-O-R-A-H, Doniger, D-O-N-I-G-E-R, on Instagram. And listen to our show on Sirius. We're on Thursday nights from 8 to 10. I'm with my co-host. He's one of my close friends, and we marry what the body does and what the swing does, and try and help everybody. Form dictates function, so it's a different sort of way of looking at it and very individualized, which is the way I think golf instruction is going. So that is where you can find me.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come and be a part of the show. 1,000 other questions I'd love to ask you. I hope you'll come back and do it again sometime because you've been fantastic.
It's my pleasure. Tell PK, I know he's after me, that I say hi, and anytime.
All right, Debbie. Take care. All the best to you and your family. I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.
All right. Thanks, man. You too.
All right. See you, Debbie. That's Debbie Doniger. And, again, her website is debbiedoniger.com, Doniger, Debbie Doniger. And, boy, you want to talk about some great stories, some great tips, some great insights. She's got some great videos on her site. And, boy, I sure hope we get the opportunity to catch up with her soon because, like I said, I got about 1,000 other questions I had here to talk to her about, and hopefully we get the opportunity to do that. Before I get to my next guest, Peter Kessler, I want to give a shout-out to a few of our sponsors. First, folks, you've heard me talking about ClubHub sensors over the last several months. Well, it's the best portable shot tracking and swing analysis golf device out there on the market. Other shot trackers tell you what happened. ClubHub's going to tell you what happened and why. Take the progress that you make on the practice tee directly to your rounds with the only device of its kind that can go on the course with you. I have ClubHub sensors on all of my clubs. They screw right into the tops of your grips. And I can tell you, since I've put the ClubHub sensors on my clubs, I've learned more about my swing and all of the data surrounding it than I've learned over the 40 years I've been playing the game. Because not only do you get GPS distances to the hazards and to the green, but after your round, you can look back at the images and the layout of every hole in the course that you just played and see exactly where and how far you hit every shot. No other GPS tool on the market captures that, lets you go back and review your round the way the ClubHub app does. It's available for Androids or iPhones, and the app keeps track of your swing speed of every club in your bag, your tempo, your angle of attack, plus you get a 3D view of your swing as well. And again, no other rangefinder can do all that for you. Go over to clubhubgolf.com to order your set of ClubHub sensors today and enter the coupon code NEXT to get 10% off on all products at checkout. Again, clubhubgolf.com, enter the coupon code NEXT, and you're going to get the best GPS and swing analysis tool on the market for a great low price, and you'll see your game in a whole new way. I also want to remind you about our friends over at Power Bar. Energy and focus on the course are essential, whether you're playing, on tour in your club championship or just your weekend four ball with your buddies. Power Bar is the golfer's nutritional bar that can help you with both of those things, energy and focus. Eat some before you get to the first tee and the rest every 3 holes until it's finished, and you're going to play with more energy and focus to win. Power Bar was developed by a lifelong golfer and a food scientist to help all golfers play their best. Go online to powerbargolf.com and order yours today. We're also excited to be partnering with the Ben Hogan Golf Equipment Company. All Ben Hogan irons and wedges are handcrafted one at a time in their Fort Worth, Texas factory. No mass production, no shortcuts. Now you can order custom-made irons, wedges, and hybrids at benhogangolf.com. They build clubs to your specification and, best of all, charge you a fraction of the typical retail price. Check out their complete line of forged irons, wedges, utility irons, hybrids, and bags, plus accessories now at benhogangolf.com. And folks, this section of the show is sponsored by our good friends over at the PGA Tour Superstore.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the PGA Tour Superstore. See why golfers everywhere are proud to call PGA Tour Superstore their golf pro shop. Visit them online at PGATourSuperstore.com. Now back to Chris and more of the show.
And now back with me on the French Lick Resort guest line is the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. Be sure to follow Peter on his Facebook page and over on Twitter at Peter Kessler. Also be sure to check out Peter's podcast titled Reading the Break, which you can find on his website, peterkessler.com, on readingthebreak.com, over on SoundCloud, or even on our site, nextonthetee.net. No one knows more about the history of golf than Peter does. Those of you who are like me, you've been watching Peter since he helped launch the Golf Channel back in 1995. His show Golf Talk Live is by far the best golf show there's ever been. Peter has also interviewed every major golf figure of the 20th and 21st centuries. And we've been lobbying for Peter to be inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame for his lifetime achievements and the contributions that he's made to the game of golf. My ultimate day, folks, a round of golf at Augusta National, but that would be quickly followed by sitting on the veranda of the clubhouse listening to Peter tell stories. It just couldn't get any better than that. Good evening, Peter. How are you, my friend?
After that introduction, I'm doing great. I was so down and depressed, but all better now. Thank you.
You bet, Peter. So, Peter, you probably heard my last guest, Debbie Doniger. She sends her best regards to you, and I know that she has known you since, she said practically your whole life. What do you remember about Debbie?
Well, it's funny. I joined you just as she was talking about skin cancer, and I knew Debbie when she was 8 years old, maybe 9, and her dad, Bill Doniger, belonged to the same club that I played golf at in Greenwich, Connecticut, and it's funny, strange, as opposed to funny, ha-ha. But in thinking back about Debbie and the son when she was a girl, and I watched her probably from 8. Well, really, even when she went to college and would come home from college, I would see her, but she was always sunburnt. She was always sunburned. She was darker than anybody else. She didn't have the kind of skin that lent itself to getting real darkly tanned, but rather she would get burned, and so she had a fairer skin than, there's 6 levels. If you're a 4 or 5, and you're Caucasian, then you can handle the sun a lot better than if you're a lower number. And she was always sunburned as a kid, so not shocked to hear that she would have issues. But at that time, there wasn't nearly the kind of information that there was even a decade later about the kind of protection that you could use to put on your face and all these differing degrees of strength of protection. And she wasn't using it then, and people weren't. I remember even in the 60s when I would go with my mom and my younger sister to the pool, that she had one of those shields that she would put down that would reflect the sun onto your face. It was like a mirror. And everybody had them in the 50s and 60s, and everybody who went to a local pool would have these shields, and they would reflect the sun, and people weren't wearing anything to protect themselves. I mean, it was a completely different time. So I understand how she ended up having a problem, even though, as I remember, I don't think that ran in her family, but she was a really wonderful player. When she first took up the game, she definitely had an affinity for it. It reminds me of the Lydia Ko story. When she was 4 or 5, she went to a range and somebody gave her a club and she just started hitting good shots, and somebody pointed out that she had like ideal natural hand action, and Debbie Doniger really had a natural feel for the game and played some really good golf, was competitive as a teenager. She wasn't big, she wasn't tall. She was, Debbie's maybe 5'4" or so, and an appropriate weight for her height, but she could play, and she had a really good short game, and she played in college, and it was a wonderful family, and I'm delighted to see how well she's doing, and I'm not surprised that she's made her way in the golf world. Good for her. I'm glad she's got the radio show, and we stay in irregular touch, but I'll always be a fan of hers, and I think just great things about her, and she's somebody you definitely want to tee it up with, because I'm sure she can still break 75.
Peter, I want to spend some time talking about some parallels that I started to see between the careers of Bobby Jones and Tiger Woods. Because if you go back to the 1930s, right, so at the end of Jones's career, there were some young upstart guys winning a bunch of tournaments in the 30s. Henry Picard, Gene Sarazen, those guys, Sarazen winning, all 4 majors between 32 and 35. Those guys, in the 30s started to become the story in golf, just like today we see some of the younger guys, the Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomases, becoming the story on the PGA Tour. Yet when Bobby Jones agreed to come back and play in what was then the Augusta National Invitational, what would become the Masters, his comeback became the story. It overshadowed everything, like Tiger now. Right, Tiger is now the story, whether he is or not. Right, it felt like to me Jason Day was almost an afterthought that he won. Tiger finishing tied for 55th seemed to get all the headlines. Do you see parallels for what it was like for Jones and his comeback and all of the attention and the media surrounding it to what we see now with Tiger?
Well, it's different, because when Jones retired in 1930 at the age of 28 from formal competitions. He wrote a note and said, "Gee, at some point I may, show up at championships, but I'm done with championships for now." And really, the only reason that Jones played in the 34 Masters was he was encouraged to play because he was the host of the golf tournament. And Southern Company manners at that time as a host meant you participated in whatever the activity was. So he reluctantly played in the 34 Masters, but he knew how important it was, as you suggest, from a media point of view, in getting the thing jump-started. And what they did that was so clever in 1934 to put the Masters on the map immediately is, one, they had Bobby Jones, and Bobby Jones was the most golden hero of the golden age of sport, even more so than Babe Ruth or Jack Dempsey. I mean, he was the guy. So for Jones to be putting on a golf tournament at which every great player showed up except for Gene Sarazen in 34, because Gene had made a commitment to do some exhibitions in South America, and of course he played the next year and won and completed the career slam. So just the appearance of Jones at the tournament was huge in terms of public interest, because it was overstated that Jones was coming back. He wasn't. He was just going to play in the event, and he didn't play anything until the next year. So, it wasn't like he returned to championship golf. The other thing that was going on was that the greatest sports writers of the time, one of whom was a member, Grantland Rice, who was just as big a name as you could possibly have in terms of sports writing, including golf, who wrote a biography of Bobby Jones, along with O.B. Keeler, who was a journalist who traveled with Jones to every one of his major championships, and with Jones wrote all of the things that Jones wrote, and he chronicled everything that Jones did, and he was really his companion. But Grantland Rice was a member of the club and a big shot at the time, and so what Jones and Clifford Roberts, the co-founder of Augusta National, decided to do was to hold the golf tournament right after the exhibition baseball season was over in Florida. So they got a special car for the sports writers, and they delivered them from Florida up to Augusta, put them up in the Bon Air Hotel, took really good care of them. And so all of the greatest sports writers showed up at the very first Masters, and they were treated like royalty, and they were enamored of Jones, and Jones had just retired a few years before, so his star was still pretty bright. And so it was written about, extensively during the week and after the championship was over, and that's what helped put it on the map. But when Jones came back, it was to play reluctantly as the host, and I think he finished tied for 13th, and that would be the best finish he would ever have in the Masters. And he was on record as saying in the first round, which he played with Paul Runyon, Jones said that on the second hole, which was actually what is now the 11th hole, he had about a 20-footer for birdie, and it was a big rainbow putt. And he said as soon as he hit the putt, he realized that the magic was gone. He realized that he didn't have the touch that he had that allowed him to win 13 of the last 21 majors in which he played. And because he realized instantly the magic was gone, he didn't have great expectations anyway, but he certainly lowered them at that point. And he never really could handle the greens that he and Alistair McKenzie built at Augusta National. He always had problems with it from the time it was built going forward relative to the kind of putting display he had put on from 1923 through 1930. Now, in Tiger's case, you have somebody who's actually trying to make a comeback. And so the frenzy is greater because in Jones's case, I think he played down expectations that he would do more than play as the host of the golf tournament. In Tiger's case, people are hoping that, his biggest fans are hoping that he's going to win tournaments and win major championships again and be competitive in important events as he was, for a few weeks earlier this year. So this is a comeback, and And Tiger's trying to make his mark as opposed to playing celebrity golf, which is really what Jones did at that point. He was playing as a celebrity, playing as a host, as opposed to playing as a competitor. But Tiger's playing as a competitor. But the expectation of Jones's arrival on the golf course was tremendous for its time. And, of course, the expectations at golf tournaments that Tiger shows up now are humongous. And at the Players' Championship, I expect the crowds will be very large. He, of course, didn't play well last week. And, everybody rises and falls with how he does. And he didn't play particularly well at the Masters either. Never got himself to where he wanted to be for the weekend. So, this is a work in progress. And this is not a course that you would think of for Tiger at this point. I mean, he's won on this golf course, and he did it when he won the Grand Slam. So he had the Grand Slam plus the Players. So he had all five at one time after he completed the Masters in 2001 to complete the Grand Slam. The month before, he had won the Players' Championship. But, in those days, he was the straightest player around. Everybody thinks he did it with chipping and putting. But in 2000 and 2001 and 2002, he put the ball in play. He hit greens, and either he made the putt or he missed the putt, and he went to the next hole. There was very little recovery shots. There was very little chipping and putting. Everything was three-quarter-ish. I mean, I was with him at the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble, and I walked 67 of the 72 holes with him, and it was... He just put the ball in play, and then he would hit the green, and and he would have a 10-footer, and he'd make a bunch of them, and he missed a bunch of them. But I mean, there were a few, acrobatic shots during the week, and a few that demonstrated his power. One iron in particular that he hit to the par 5 sixth hole, which was particularly dramatic from a long way away, and it wasn't a long club. I think it was a 7-iron. It was a couple of 100 yards, and it's straight up a hill, and he put it within makeable eagle range, and so he had a few fantastic shots in demonstrating his power, but basically he just put the ball in play. And that's what you got to do at this golf course this week is you got to put the ball in play. And so Tiger has not been putting the ball in play. And it's, you look at the history of the winners, and it's a lot of guys who just put the ball in play as opposed to, the biggest hitters. Dustin Johnson has not had a fun time at the Players' Championship over the course of his career. A lot of the big knockers have not. So the expectation for Tiger this week needs to be muted a little bit, but he can hit a lot of 3-woods and he can hit a lot of stingers. I remember watching him the year that he won, and he hit that stinger with the 2-iron a bunch. It would go like 20 feet above the ground, and then it would just kind of fall to the left. It was a little bit of a draw, but a little bit of a fall, but he could just put it in play on every single hole. If he will adopt a conservative strategy this week from the tee, and there's every reason to think that if I think of it, he's thought of it, that, he could actually put himself in play because he's still the most ridiculous iron player. I mean, he was number one in greens in regulation a few times in the early part of his career and found himself close to number one on other occasions. I mean, his iron play is just such an underrated thing. Was for Jack Nicklaus, too. They, par 3s were actually the place where Tiger and Jack had their biggest advantage, not par 5s, because they both hit the ball so high and the ball sat down so quickly, and they would hit less club than other people into the par 3 hole, that they were hitting it higher with a shorter shaft, with more control, with a ball that just sat down, didn't spin back, didn't bounce forward, and that was where they had a huge advantage, was their ability to play shorter irons and higher fast-stopping shots on the par 3 holes. And so, anyway, Tiger needs to put it in play, and if he can play.
And Peter, going back to something you said a moment ago about Jones's putting, right now we're seeing Tiger struggle on the green. Same thing happened to Jones when he played in the Masters. Amazingly enough, he was still hitting his drives 280 to 300 yards with that equipment, which I find absolutely astounding. But in the 34 Masters, Jones couldn't even make the little short putts. And Hogan went through the same thing with his putting. Is this just rust with Tiger, or is this something that we've seen other great players go through after they've had an extended layoff?
Well, the putting is the thing that goes first. Arnold sensed in the early 60s when he was in his early 30s that his putting was starting to elude him. He was the best player in the world from 1958 Masters roughly till the U.S. Open ended in 1962, which he lost to Jack Nicklaus at Oakmont in the playoff. And for the 90 holes, Nicklaus had 1 3-putt, and Arnold had 11 3-putts. And Arnold, by 64, was having trouble with his putting, and certainly against Casper in 66 at Olympic, where he lost the 7-shot lead with 9 holes to play in the U.S. Open at Casper, he had some putting issues. And, Seve wasn't winning anymore after that. Tiger won his last major championship at 32, Watson at 34-ish, couldn't putt anymore after that. Very few guys retained their putting. Nicklaus kept it for his whole life. I saw him not too long ago. I said, "How are you putting?" And he said, "I am just as steady over it now as I was when I was 25, and that's saying something." Gary Player remained a good putter for his entire career. Billy Casper remained a good putter for his entire career. Lee Trevino remained a good putter for his entire career. That's about the list. And Hale Irwin was able to take it deep into his career. He was always a good putter, but then he actually became a better putter as he got older, funnily enough. Made so many birdies as a senior. So what Tiger's going through now could be problematic because, here he is in his early 40s, and, I just, on one hand, have figured out the guys who, were still putting good in their early 40s. So, it's not a great list. Phil wasn't putting good at this age, and Phil's been putting better this year, and he's worked his fanny off inside of 6 feet. I mean, it's very obvious his stroke is much better inside of 6 feet. He used to have trouble taking the club back too far, and he'd decelerate, and he lost a lot of tournaments missing inside of 5 feet. Major championships could be problematic for him, and so he's always been a kind of a streaky putter, I think, and he's enjoying some success right now, and he's working hard at it. So this is a big question mark for Tiger because he isn't putting badly, and he doesn't have the yips, but he's not making anything, and that's what Arnold said to me. I said, so how did you know, that it was trouble other than you started missing? And he said, he said, putts that I used to just hit right in the middle of the hole. He said, if it had a little break, he said, all of a sudden I might be a little too firm and play it too high, or I might decelerate thinking I had set up the blade too high on the intended starting line, and I would ease into it. And he said, so I started losing my touch to make putts. And so what we don't know is how is Tiger's touch. We know he's not been making a bunch of stuff, and he hasn't really made a bunch of stuff all year since he started this comeback. But mechanically, he looks very good to me. The putter seems to be traveling through the same space in the sky that it has historically. His posture looks the same. The way he's arranged himself over the golf ball and his ball position looks the same to me. There's a little hinge going back. There's a little release going through, which a lot of guys don't do, which is what Rory McIlroy did when he won at Bay Hill because he had seen Brad Faxon, and Brad Faxon said, loosen it up. He said, let the putter head go to the right of your hands going back. Don't make a shoulder stroke. Have a little play in your wrists. Have a little play going through, and Tiger's always had that. Jack didn't do that. Ben Crenshaw did do that. Bobby Jones did do that. Billy Casper did do that. Lee Trevino did not do that. Greg Norman did not do that. Actually, Greg was right in the middle. I remember there was a time when I felt like there was some good play in his wrist, but generally he was pretty solid and a lot of shoulder strokes. But so the Tiger question is, really one that we're going to have to find out over the next few months as the season now, starts to accelerate to the last 3 major championships, and the Players' Championship is, of course, this week, and those aren't the hardest greens in the world, and they're not the most undulating greens in the world, and they're greens that Tiger can certainly handle, and he hasn't demonstrated any problem with touch on 30-footers on undulating greens. It just may be what Arnold told me, a little too firm, so I'm missing it high, a little decel, missing it low. He knows what's going on. He knows what to work on, and we'll find out if you can regain your touch. He was born a great putter, and I'm hoping that he's just temporarily finding it an elusive thing, and then he'll be able to put his hands on it again.
Peter, you mentioned when you were talking about Tiger and the players, right? He held all 5 at one time, right? For years, maybe forever, people have talked about the Players' Championship being sort of like the 5th Beatle, right? The media always wants to talk about, is it the 5th major? Will it become the 5th major? Is that something that's just the media stirring the pot, Or is there still someone you think within the tour that is pushing for the players to maybe eventually become a major?
Well, I mean, of course the tour wants it to be characterized as a major and accepted as a major because, you know, unlike other sports organizations, I mean, the NFL controls the Super Bowl, but the PGA Tour doesn't control any of the 4 major championships. So, sure, they would like a 5th one to be, you know, their major championship. You know, the Masters runs the Masters, and PGA runs the PGA, and the USGA runs the US Open, the R&A runs the Open Championship, and so, of course, they want it to be. But I liken they're asking this to be characterized as a major championship as somebody like, you know, somebody who's a member at Augusta National, and if you ask to play, it's probably no, and if you ask to become a member, it's a definitely no. And I think that what, you know, they're going through at the tour level is, you know, they're pushing it to be a major, they're trying to get it to be a major. They got all the guys on the Golf Channel saying it should be a major, except for Frank Novello sticking to his guns of 4 majors. You know, and Brandel takes the view that, well, it's got the biggest field, so it's the hardest tournament to win, but it's really not, because if you look at the winners, it's not the greatest players of all time, really. There's a lot of, you know, okay players on that list. You know, Jack won it, but he didn't win it there, but he won it 3 times. But you can't force it, and they've tried to force it, and it's not happening. And there's 4 majors, and the Players' Championship is a hugely important tournament. You know, but right after the 4 majors, you know, if I was a player, you know, the ones that I'd be most interested in winning, I'd want to win at Riviera. I would want to win at Muirfield. I would want to win the Players' Championship. I would want to win the Tour Championship. But I'd be good with sort of any of those. And the weakest golf course, quite frankly, is the course that the players will play this week at TPC and the stadium course. And, you know, the other courses, you know, that I just mentioned are better golf courses, and you'd like to win on those. So, you know, winning at Riviera, because everybody shows up. Everybody shows up at Jack's. Everybody shows up at the Players. You know, the 30 best guys show up at the Tour Championship, so that's a trickier one because, you know, it just shows that you played well all year long, but it's such a small field. But, you know, that's a super event to win. So it's right there in that grouping, and maybe it leads that pack, but it's certainly not in the top 4. Those are chiseled in stone. You know, that's Mount Rushmore. There's no more rock. And Michelangelo is not going to create another face on that mountain.
Peter, last week I was joined by Tony Jacklin, and Tony won a couple of majors, did some great things, particularly in the Ryder Cup and back in the 80s, both as a player, you know, way back when, obviously, but as a captain in the 80s. Give me your thoughts. How do you characterize Tony Jacklin's career?
Well, he happens to be a really good friend of mine and has been a good friend of mine for a very long time, over 20 years. And we've played golf together, and we've hung out together, and we've done a bunch of TV, and we did print, and we did radio, and we've gone together on speaking engagements. You know, Tony, you know, grew up in Scunthorpe, England, and he would hit balls really off a piece of rubber from a tire to, you know, 20 feet away. I mean, he had nowhere to hit the golf ball. And, you know, as a teenager, he got a job in the pro shop, and he turned pro, and while he was in his teens, when he still wasn't a good player, but he quickly became a very, very good player. And when he came over to the United States, Jack Nicklaus was really good to Tony, and took him in and, you know, showed him the ropes of playing over here. Tony was still a young man at that time in the mid-'60s, and his first tournament win was 68 at Jacksonville, and that's really what got him going, because he built up a lot of confidence. He beat Arnold and a few other guys that week, and you know, and then the next year he went ahead and won the British Open at Royal Lytham and St. Anne's by a zillion shots. And you know, every time we talk about it, I always steer him around to the 9th hole, the final round, and he says, yeah, he said it wasn't over yet, and I was really nervous, and I had a 30-footer, and I hit it 10 feet too hard, and hit the back of the cup, went straight up in the air and straight into the cup. And he said, and then I relaxed, and I played a really good final 9, and he was playing with Bob Charles, and it came down to the end of the tournament, and Bob drove first and said, "Oh, it's in a bunker, and I'm in terrible shape." And Tony said to himself, "That ball's perfect." And he went ahead and beat Bob. And actually, when they were coming down the back nine, in those days, the clubs were made differently. And, if you had a wood, there was, string, what we called whipping in those days, kind of a nylon string that wrapped around the bottom where the shaft and the hosel would meet. And Bob Charles's started to come unraveled, and they wanted to go back into the pro shop and have somebody deal with it. And Tony Jacklin, who of course had worked in a pro shop, knew how to deal with whipping on clubs and knew how to take care of clubs and fix whipping and put new whipping on. And so he sat down on one of the tees and took Bob Charles's clubs and fixed the whipping for Bob, and then gave Bob a whipping. And so of course he won that year, and then he won the next year. He won the U.S. Open, so he had both titles at the same time. And then in '72, it looked like he was going to win the Open Championship again at Muirfield, and Nicklaus went out in front of him 6 shots behind and shot 6 under. And what's forgotten is that Jack bogeyed 16 and didn't birdie 17, so it was kind of his fault that he didn't end up winning that tournament, because he wasn't able to close it out after going 6, 7 under for the first 15 holes. And Jacklin and Torino were playing behind him going, "We better get going," and they both eagled 9 and came down to 17, and Tony was right in front of the par 5, 17th and 2, and Lee had missed 3 shots and now was over the green in 4, and Tony had a very, very simple, straightforward little chip. I mean, it couldn't have been any more straightforward, and he didn't hit a good chip. He hit it to about 15 feet, where a 12 handicapper would have hit it to 15 feet from where it was. It was a really, really rank shot. And then Trevino chipped in, and then Tony 3-putted, missing the last one from 30 inches, no more, hit a little pull. And all of a sudden, Trevino, chipping in for par, had the 1-stroke lead, and he raced to the 18th tee and hit his shot before Tony was even there, just to keep it moving, and he didn't want to start thinking about choking. And Jacklin went and bogeyed that hole too, so Nicklaus finished second, and then there was Jacklin. And Tony just said to me a million times, he said, after that happened, he said, I was just never the same again. He said, I just never had the confidence. I didn't feel like I could compete anymore. There was part of me that felt like, okay, well, you won both Opens, so you did that, and you're a super player, and he said, and I never got it together again. And he said, just was a spiral from that point forward. And then I had some other issues, and then I had some money issues, and then I had some marriage issues. And he said, but my game he said, I was never the same after that. And then, of course, little did, could we have guessed that, he would go on to an even greater triumph in terms of the sport by becoming the successful 4-time Ryder Cup captain in the 1980s. And, Tony changed everything. I mean, when he was the captain for the first time in '83, they didn't have good clothes, and they didn't have good bags, and they didn't have a decent belt and a good shirt and sweaters, and a real mess. He had plastic shoes that somebody gave him and junky bags, and Tony changed all of that. And he got, the Americans had always been dressed beautifully, and everything was first class, and they took care of themselves, and they were taken care of. And so Tony changed the whole culture of the European side so that it would be like the American side. And he was the first person who came up with the idea, let's have our own private room to meet in, because funnily enough, up to that point, they would kind of meet in one of the players' rooms, or a bunch of guys sitting around on the beds. I mean, it was completely absurd. And or they would be in the bar, or they would be a corner of the dining room. Tony got them their own meeting room, and and got them to be confident. And of course, he had Seve Ballesteros, Seve and Sandy Lyle and Bernhard Langer and Nick Faldo. I mean, it was Ridicky and Woosnam. Later Colin Montgomery. I mean, it was, ridiculous group of guys, all born really around that year of 1957 that Seve was born. And so he had, ridiculous talent for those 4 Ryder Cups, but he made them feel so differently about themselves. And, and then he ended up having, I think they won twice, lost once, and tied once was, I think, the record. But they had never done anything before. I mean, nobody even paid attention to the Ryder Cup. I mean, the thing really started in '26, and it was totally informal. And Sam Ryder was was a successful businessman who actually came up with the idea of selling seeds in little packets. And I remember when I was a little boy, my mom would buy us seeds, and then you'd get a little thing, and you'd put the seeds outside, and whatever it was would grow, and they were a penny a packet, and he made a fortune. And his teacher was Abe Mitchell, who was an English pro, and so when he had the trophy made, he had the top of it look like Abe Mitchell's swing, and then it started formally in 1927, and the Americans were just better players already by then, and really just kicked their fannies for decades and decades, and nobody made any money from it. Nobody got paid from it. There was no television. There was no anything, and nobody really cared about it until the 80s. Then it became a big deal, and then there was the big thing with NBC and the contracts, and and people started showing up for the first time. I mean, I went to Ryder Cups before the 80s. There was nobody there. There was nobody there. I was like, nobody there. And it was like going, how many people are watching the best players at your club? Nobody there. And, and then, of course, it became big business, and that's where the PGA made their money, and that's where the USGA made their money, was when the U.S. Open became a big television, product, and then they took over the concession to sell all of the merchandise. That was the big turnaround. The last concession that was held before the USGA got a hold of theirs, the rights to sell the merchandise, was 1997 at Winged Foot. Tom Neoporte was the head pro, and the head pros would have the concessions at the major championships, and they would have the shirts made, and they would sell the shirts, and the pro would make the profit, the club would make the profit, and they saw how many shirts sold in 97. They said, that's the end of that, and then that's when they started the merchandise tent right after that. And of course, the merchandise at the Masters, they do $50 million every single day, and you can't buy it online. Can you imagine how much they would sell if you could buy it online? So they obviously don't need the money, because somebody did probably suggest that if they sold it online, that they would make billions and billions of dollars. And Tom Neoporte was a very interesting guy. He was really the last club pro that I can think of that won a PGA Tour event. And it's funny because Claude Harmon was the head pro at Winged Foot and won the 48 Masters by 5 shots. And then Tom Neoporte ended up succeeding him, and he won the Bob Hope Desert Classic in '67. And he was driving from tournament to tournament on the West Coast in a station wagon, and he had a lot of pair of black shoes. And for the final round of the Bob Hope that he won, he mismatched a pair of black shoes. And afterwards, they're sitting up with Bob Hope and President Eisenhower and his wife Mamie Eisenhower, and they're taking a break, and Mamie Eisenhower looks down at his shoes and sees that he's wearing 2 different shoes, and kind of looks up at him, and he goes, "Yeah, I got a pair exactly like it in the car." And he was a terrific guy. I saw him a lot. I used to live very close to Winged Foot and played a lot of golf there. And but Tony was just a wonderful player for a very brief period of time. He too lost his putting, lost his confidence. Young man, huge mark as a Ryder Cupper, and and he hasn't been forgotten. And he does a lot of outings, and he's got a few good sponsors, and he makes some interesting figures out of. He carves wood, and he's made the faces of a zillion great players, and is actually very talented. He doesn't really play much golf. I could probably cajole him into playing around if I went down and see him. He's just a couple hours away. But, we've been friends for a long time, and I just think he's a lovely guy, and he's very relaxed, and, loved Jack and loved Arnold and loved Gary, and I think he's happy with what happened.
Well, Peter, before we let you go, do what we always ask you to do, right? Remind our listeners. How can they follow you, stay up to date with the great things that you're doing and that you've done over the course of your career? Because there's no better storyteller than Peter Kessler.
I don't even know what I'm doing, so I don't even know how people can find out what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure it all out. I'm trying to get myself in a position where I can do some shows again, where I would host and do a variety of things, some like the Golf Channel and some other ideas that I've got, but, the same sort of thing, interviewing and hosting and researching and writing and voicing and all that stuff. So I'd like to do some stuff on camera again, and I'm working with some people that may turn out to be something, in which case we would have an online presence and try to cobble together a lot of new content. And I've got some ideas for some other people that I'd like to have appear on camera that have not been asked, that I think could do a really great job. And, have a few different hosts, have a lot of content of a lot of different kinds. So I'm working on that. I have 7 podcasts on my website, peterkessler.com, and my bio is there. And I'm working. And I stopped doing the podcast because I've been writing a book, and I've been putting the stories in the book instead of the podcast. And so I can't figure out quite what to do there. I'm going to try to do something else with the podcasts. I may do something on YouTube. I may do something on Facebook Live. I'm working on a bunch of ideas. So probably the next go around, when we get to the next major, hopefully I'll be in a little more solidified shape, and I can share what I'm doing.
Well, Peter, no matter how much time I get to spend with you, it's never nearly enough. I can't thank you enough for being back here tonight, for how generous you've been with your time. You are just the very best, and there's just no other way to say it. No matter what you do, no matter how you've done it, whether it's on podcasts or on radio or on TV, you're the best, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Well, I love being on the show. You promote me like crazy off of the show, and I'm very, very honored. And I heard you about the World Golf Hall of Fame thing, and just to take it seriously for a second, if I had continued to bang out TV shows for another 10 years beyond the 7 or 8 that I did, then something like that would have been more likely, and then adding the radio to it. But I think I haven't been quite visible enough for a period of time that's long enough that if I can put together another gig that will allow me to do a lot of programming over, say, another 5 to 10 year period, and I can complete the contribution, and then maybe I fall into the category of people that would be considered. But I feel like there's much left to be accomplished, and I haven't done enough by any standard yet. But if I got a crack to bang out some more stuff and do it for another 5 to 10 years, then it would be a pretty cool portfolio. And I don't know if the World Golf Hall of Fame is the answer, but it will have certainly satisfied me if I can have one more go around.
Well, I'm rooting hard for that, and anything that we can do to promote that or let people know about it, or whoever we need to talk to, we're certainly all about it, because and I mean it sincerely, you're the best that's ever done this.
Well, thanks, buddy. I was certainly taken aback the other day when I saw your new picture on social media, and I went, now, wait a minute, is that Chris, or is that Bob Redford as Sundance and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? I had to take a second look. So you're looking good, and I love the show, and I love what you do for golf, and you make a huge contribution, actually, to sports in general, too. But your contribution to golf is just absolutely incredible. It's really, really consistent, and the quality of your work is really consistent, and that's the thing. It's not just having the platform; it's delivering consistently every single week, and that's what Jack did at the top of his career. That's what Tiger did, and you do that. You do that every time I hear your show. I go, it's really, really good, and it's really, really consistent, and it's a very hard thing to do in any walk of life, but you've totally nailed it here, and I've got a great deal of respect for you.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Peter. I look forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to catch up with you again real soon. Thanks for being here again tonight, Peter. I appreciate you very much.
You've got my number. Talk to you soon, pal.
All right. Take care, Peter.
You too.
That is the great Peter Kessler, and like I say, very sincerely, he is the greatest of all time. There's no question in my mind, and hopefully he gets the opportunity to get back behind a mic or a television camera, because there's just no one better at talking golf than Peter Kessler. So we got our fingers crossed for that. All right, folks, it is time for me to put a bow on this episode of Next on the Tee. My sincere thanks go out to Debbie Doniger and, of course, Peter Kessler for joining this week, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Please give me your thoughts. Check out our page on Facebook, Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, and share your feedback with me there. Plus, if you've got a question for one of our future guests or someone who's recently been on the show, please let me know. We'll get that question answered for you. You can see who some of our future guests are going to be by going online to our website, nextonthetee.net. Please also check out our sister show on the football side, Thursday Night Tailgate, with me and my co-host Bob Lazzari and our announcer Joe LaGianusa. That show airs live every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Blog Talk Radio. And that show, like this one, also available as a free podcast over on iHeartRadio or on Podbean. Every week on Thursday Night Tailgate, we are joined by 5 NFL legends sharing their stories from their playing days, plus their insights into what's going on around the NFL today. Plus, we also highlight 2 players doing great things in their communities in our Spotlight on the Positive segment. You can find that show online. Our website there is ThursdayNightTailgate.com, and like I say, this one is nextonthetee.net. Folks, we can't thank you enough for choosing to listen to this show tonight. We know you got a lot of shows and podcasts to listen to. We really appreciate the fact that you are making Next on the Tee one of them. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.
You've been listening to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA pros and top instructors and media members go to tell their stories. Join us the same time every Tuesday to hear more stories about the game we love from people who love sharing those stories with you. It's all about the great game of golf. It's all about the great